A black boy saves every cent to buy his mom a birthday gift. But when a racist smashes the cake, his world shatters, until an unexpected twist changes everything. You won't believe how this ends. The morning sun filtered through the faded curtains of a small apartment on the edge of town. 12-year-old Jamal sat cross-legged on his bed, counting a pile of crumpled dollar bills and loose change. His small fingers moved quickly, his lips murmuring the numbers under his breath. $23.50, he whispered, a quiet smile spreading across his face. It had taken months of mowing lawns, returning bottles for change, and skipping after-school treats. But he had finally saved enough. His mom's birthday was just 2 days away, and this year, Jamal was determined to make it special. His mother, Tanya, was everything to him. She worked long shifts at a diner, often coming home with tired eyes, but a warm smile. Jamal had lost count of the number of times she had skipped meals or bought him new shoes instead of something for herself. Every birthday, she insisted she didn't need a thing. But Jamal knew better. This year, he wanted to surprise her with a cake, a real fancy one from the bakery downtown. Not the lopsided cupcakes they made together every year, but something beautiful, something that showed her how much she meant to him. Jamal tucked the money into a small envelope and slid it into his pocket. "I'll go tomorrow after school," he thought, imagining the look on her face when she saw the cake. The next day at school felt endless. Jamal stared at the clock, willing the hands to move faster. Finally, the last bell rang, and he grabbed his bag, rushing out of the classroom. He darted down the street, weaving through crowds of people. His heart raced as he approached the bakery. The smell of fresh bread and sugary frosting wafted through the air, and he hesitated for a moment just outside the door. Jamal took a deep breath and stepped inside. The bakery was warm and inviting, with glass cases full of colorful cakes and pastries. A cheerful woman behind the counter greeted him with a smile. "Hi there, sweetie. What can I get for you?" Jamal reached into his pocket and pulled out the envelope, placing it gently on the counter. "I'd like to buy a birthday cake," he said, his voice steady but quiet. The woman's eyes softened as she looked at him, then at the money he had saved. She crouched down to his level. "Who's it for?" "My mum," Jamal replied, his smile growing wider. "She works so hard, and I want her to have something special this year." The woman's smile faltered for just a moment, her eyes glistening with emotion. "That's very sweet of you," she said, standing up and gesturing toward the display case. "Let's find something perfect for her." Jamal's eyes lit up as she pointed to a 2-layer cake, decorated with delicate flowers and "Happy Birthday" written in elegant script. It was simple, yet beautiful, exactly what he had imagined. "This one," he said, nodding firmly. The woman carefully placed the cake into a box, tying it with a bright pink ribbon. Jamal handed her the envelope, and she counted the money, her expression softening again. "You're just a little short," she said gently. "But don't worry, I've got the rest." Jamal's face lit up with gratitude. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice full of sincerity. As he left the bakery, the cake carefully balanced in his arms, Jamal couldn't stop smiling. He imagined his mom's reaction, the way her face would light up when she saw what he had done. But as he turned the corner onto the quiet street that led home, a sense of unease settled over him. A group of men stood near the sidewalk, their voices loud and mocking. Jamal tried to walk past without drawing attention, but it was too late. "Hey, kid," one of them called, his voice laced with mockery. "What's in the box?" Jamal clutched the cake tighter, his steps quickening. He didn't answer, but he could feel their eyes on him, the tension in the air growing thicker with every step. Jamal's heart pounded in his chest as he walked faster, gripping the cake box tightly. He didn't dare look back, hoping the men would lose interest and leave him alone. But their voices only grew louder. "Hey, kid, I'm talking to you," one of them barked. The sharpness in his tone made Jamal's legs tremble, but he kept moving. "Must be something special in that box if you're holding it so close," another one sneered, followed by the sound of boots scuffing against the pavement. Jamal could hear their footsteps now, closing the distance between them. He turned his head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of the group, a trio of men in their late 20s, with rough expressions and a mocking glint in their eyes. One of them, a tall man wearing a faded leather jacket, was smirking as he pointed at the box. "Let's see what you got there," the man said, stepping in front of Jamal and blocking his path. Jamal's voice wavered, but he stood his ground. "It's for my mom. Please just let me go." The man snorted, his smirk widening. "Your mom, huh? How cute." He turned to his friends, and they laughed, the sound echoing down the empty street. Jamal tried to sidestep, but another man moved to block him. "You're not going anywhere, boy," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. The way he said, "boy," stung. Jamal had heard that word before, always in a tone that made him feel small, made him feel like he didn't belong. His grip tightened on the box, his knuckles turning white. "Please," Jamal said again, his voice barely a whisper. "It's just a cake." But the men didn't care. The one in the leather jacket leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "Well, let's take a look then. I bet it's not even worth all this fuss." Before Jamal could react, the man grabbed the box from his hands. "No!" Jamal shouted, his voice breaking as he reached out to stop him. But it was too late. The man ripped open the box, exposing the beautiful cake inside. For a brief moment, he seemed taken aback by how carefully it had been decorated, the soft swirls of frosting and the delicate lettering that read, "Happy Birthday, Mom." But then, with a cruel grin, he tilted the box and let the cake slide out. Jamal watched in horror as the cake fell, landing face down on the dirty sidewalk. The frosting smeared, the flowers crushed, and the words erased in an instant. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Jamal's chest heaved as he stared at the ruined cake, the gift he had worked so hard to give his mum. The man in the leather jacket laughed, a harsh, grating sound that cut through the silence. "Oops," he said mockingly. "Guess it wasn't that special after all." His friends joined in, their laughter ringing in Jamal's ears. Jamal felt a lump rising in his throat, his eyes stinging with tears he refused to let fall. He bent down, his hands trembling as he tried to scoop the cake back into the box. The frosting smeared across his fingers, and the more he tried to fix it, the worse it looked. "Oh, is the little boy gonna cry?" one of the men jeered. Jamal bit his lip hard, forcing back the tears. He stood up, clutching the ruined cake in his hands. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with a mix of pain and defiance as he looked at the men. "You don't know what it's like," he said quietly. The men stopped laughing, their smirks faltering. "You don't know how hard she works," Jamal continued, his voice trembling with emotion. "You don't know what it took for me to get this for her." For a brief moment, there was silence. One of the men shifted uncomfortably, looking away. But the man in the leather jacket rolled his eyes. "Whatever, kid," he muttered, turning and walking away. "It's just a cake." His friends followed, their laughter fading as they disappeared down the street. Jamal stood there, staring at the crumpled box in his hands. The tears he had been holding back finally spilled over, running silently down his cheeks. He felt defeated. How was he going to explain this to his mom? How could he tell her that the gift he had poured his heart into was gone? But as he stood there, a voice called out behind him, "Hey kid, wait." Jamal turned, his eyes wide with surprise. Jamal turned slowly, wiping the tears from his face with the back of his hand. A woman in her 40s was walking toward him, carrying a shopping bag in one hand and a look of concern on her face. She wore a red jacket and had kind eyes that immediately softened when they met Jamal's. "I saw what happened," she said gently, kneeling to his level. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Jamal hesitated, clutching the crumpled cake box against his chest. He didn't trust his voice to hold steady, so he nodded instead. The woman's gaze shifted to the ruined cake, her expression tightening with a mix of sadness and anger. "That was cruel of them," she said, her voice filled with compassion. "No one deserves to be treated like that." Jamal looked down at the ground, his shoulders slumping. "It was for my mom," he murmured. "Her birthday's tomorrow, and I wanted to surprise her. I saved up for months." His voice cracked and he stopped, unable to continue. The woman reached out, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You've got a good heart," she said softly. "Not everyone would do something so thoughtful. What's your name?" "Jamal," he replied, barely above a whisper. "Well, Jamal," she said, standing up. "You wait right here." Before he could ask what she meant, the woman turned and walked briskly toward the bakery. Jamal stood frozen, watching her disappear through the door. He glanced down at the ruined cake in his hands, his heart still heavy with disappointment. Minutes felt like hours as he waited, his mind racing with doubts. What's she doing? He wondered. Why is she helping me? Just as he was about to walk away, the bakery door swung open. The woman emerged, carrying a brand new cake box tied with a golden ribbon. Her warm smile lit up the street as she approached him. "Here you go," she said, holding the box out to him. Jamal's eyes widened in disbelief. I can't take that," he stammered. "I don't have any more money." The woman shook her head, her smile unwavering. "You don't have to pay for this, Jamal. It's a gift, for your mom and for you." Jamal hesitated, his hands trembling as he reached out to take the box. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But why? Why would you do this for me?" The woman crouched down again, looking him straight in the eye. "Because sometimes the world isn't fair, and people can be cruel," she said. "But that doesn't mean kindness has to disappear. You've already shown so much love and strength, Jamal. The least I can do is make sure your mom gets the birthday she deserves." Jamal felt tears welling up again, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from gratitude. He clutched the new cake box to his chest, a small, hopeful smile breaking through his tear-streaked face. "Thank you," he said again, his voice steadier this time. "I'll never forget this." The woman stood up, brushing her hands off. "Go home, Jamal. Your mom is lucky to have a son like you." As Jamal turned to leave, the weight of the day's events began to lift. The cake in his arms felt like more than just frosting and layers. It was a symbol of resilience and the kindness that still existed in the world, even in the face of cruelty. But as he started walking, he heard another voice. "Hey, hold up!" Jamal stopped, turning to see the bakery's owner, the same woman who had helped him the day before, hurrying toward him. She was carrying a small bag. "I heard what happened out here," she said, slightly out of breath. "Those men had no right to do what they did. This is for you and your mom, on the house." She handed him the bag, which held 2 small pastries wrapped in paper. Just a little something extra to make her day sweeter. Jamal's heart swelled. He didn't have the words to express his gratitude, so he simply nodded, offering a quiet but heartfelt, "Thank you." The bakery owner smiled, ruffling his hair gently before heading back inside. As Jamal walked home, the world seemed a little brighter. The kindness of strangers had turned his heartbreak into hope, and he couldn't wait to see his mom's reaction to the cake. But little did he know, this wasn't the end of his story. That evening, Jamal sat at the small kitchen table in their cozy apartment, the new cake resting safely in its box at the center. He couldn't stop looking at it, imagining the moment his mom would open it tomorrow. As he ran his finger along the golden ribbon, the front door creaked open. Tanya stepped inside, her shoulders heavy with exhaustion from a long shift. She slipped off her worn-out sneakers and smiled when she saw Jamal waiting for her. "Hey, baby," she said, her voice soft but warm. What are you still doing up? Jamal hesitated, glancing at the cake. He didn't want to ruin the surprise, but couldn't keep the worry from his face. Just thinking, he said, trying to sound casual. Tanya gave him a knowing look as she hung up her coat. Uh-huh. What's on your mind? She asked, sitting down across from him. Jamal bit his lip. He wanted to tell her about what had happened. The men, the ruined cake, the kindness of the strangers. But every time he thought about it, the memory of the smashed cake and their laughter made his stomach twist. He didn't want her to worry. Nothing, Mama, he said, forcing a small smile. I just wanted to make sure you got home okay. Tanya reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I'm fine, baby. You don't need to worry about me. But Jamal did worry. He always worried. She worked so hard to keep their little family afloat, and he wanted so badly to make her birthday special. The next morning, Jamal woke up early, carefully setting the cake on the counter. He found one of their nicest plates, the one they only used for special occasions, and placed it next to the box. He even picked a few flowers from the patch outside their building, arranging them in a small jar as a centerpiece. When Tanya emerged from her bedroom, she froze, her hand covering her mouth. Jamal, she said, her voice catching. What is all this? Happy birthday, Mama, Jamal said, grinning from ear to ear. Tanya's eyes filled with tears as she walked over to the table. She gently lifted the lid of the cake box, gasping at the sight of the beautifully decorated cake. You did this? For me? Jamal nodded. I saved up for it. I wanted to get you something special this year. Tanya pulled him into a tight hug, her tears falling freely now. Baby, you're all the special I'll ever need, she whispered. But this is beautiful. For a few moments, the world seemed perfect. Jamal felt a warmth in his chest, knowing he had made his mom happy. But as they sat down to cut the cake, there was a knock at the door. Jamal and Tanya exchanged a curious glance. They didn't often get visitors. When Tanya opened the door, her expression shifted from surprise to confusion. Standing there was the woman from the day before, the one who had replaced the ruined cake. Hi, the woman said, smiling warmly. She was holding a small envelope in her hand. Tanya looked at her, then back at Jamal, who stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. Can I help you? The woman glanced at Jamal, giving him a reassuring nod before turning back to Tanya. You don't know me, but I met your son yesterday, she began, and I just want to say, you've raised an incredible boy. Tanya's brow furrowed. What do you mean? The woman took a deep breath. I saw what happened yesterday. Some men. They ruined the cake he bought for you. But even after that, your boy stood there, holding his head high. He didn't let them break his spirit. Tanya's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Jamal, is that true? Jamal shifted nervously, his gaze dropping to the floor. I didn't want you to worry, Mama, he mumbled. Tanya's heart broke as she pulled him close, her arms wrapping around him protectively. She looked back at the woman, her voice shaky. Thank you for helping him. The woman smiled and held out the envelope. This is for you. I know times can be hard, and, well, I just want you to know that there are people who care. Tanya hesitated, but the woman pressed the envelope into her hands. Please, she said softly. It's not charity. It's kindness. Tanya opened the envelope, her breath catching when she saw what was inside. A grocery gift card and a handwritten note that simply said, Your strength and love are inspiring. Keep shining. Tears streamed down Tanya's face as she looked at the woman, unable to find the right words. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You already have, the woman said, nodding toward Jamal. Your son reminded me that even when the world seems cold, love and kindness can still make a difference. As the woman left, Tanya closed the door and turned to Jamal, her heart swelling with pride. "You've got a good heart, Jamal," she said, brushing a tear from his cheek. "Don't ever let anyone take that away from you." Jamal smiled, a small flicker of hope lighting up inside him. He thought back to the strangers who had stepped in to help, and realized that even in the face of cruelty, there were still good people in the world. People who believed in kindness, just like he did. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the soft glow of streetlights filled the room, Jamal and his mom sat together at the kitchen table. The remnants of the cake rested on the plate, and their laughter echoed in the small apartment as they reminisced about past birthdays and moments they had shared. For a moment, it felt like the weight of the world had lifted. Tanya leaned back in her chair, looking at Jamal with a soft smile. "You know," she said, "this might be the best birthday I've ever had." Jamal beamed, his heart swelling with pride. "I'm glad, Mama," he said. But the day wasn't over yet. Another knock at the door startled them both. Who could that be now? Tanya wondered aloud as she stood up to answer it. When she opened the door, her breath caught. Standing there was the bakery owner, holding yet another small box, along with a man Jamal didn't recognize. A tall figure wearing a crisp button-down shirt and holding what looked like a clipboard. "Good evening," the man said with a warm smile. "My name is Mr. Hayes. I heard about what happened to Jamal yesterday." He glanced at Jamal, his expression one of admiration. "I work with a local community organization, and your son's story has touched a lot of hearts." Tanya blinked, her hand tightening on the doorknob. I don't understand," she said hesitantly. The bakery owner stepped forward, her face glowing with pride. "Jamal, after you left yesterday, I couldn't stop thinking about how hard you worked to buy that cake and how much it meant to you and your mom. When Mr. Hayes heard about it, he wanted to do something to show how much your kindness and determination matter." Jamal glanced nervously between the two adults, unsure of what was happening. Mr. Hayes stepped forward and handed Tanya an envelope. "Inside, you'll find a scholarship certificate for Jamal to attend one of our summer programs. It focuses on leadership, creativity, and community building for kids his age. We believe he has something special, a strength and compassion the world needs more of." Jamal's eyes widened, and his mom gasped, covering her mouth with her free hand. "I don't know what to say," Tanya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "There's nothing to say," Mr. Hayes replied with a warm smile. "Jamal has already done enough to inspire us all." "But that's not all," the bakery owner chimed in, holding out the small box in her hands. "This is for you both. A cake, on the house, every year on Tanya's birthday. It's our way of reminding you that kindness and love will always outshine the ugliness in the world." Jamal's chest felt tight as emotions swirled within him. Shock, gratitude, and a quiet pride he didn't know he could feel. He looked up at his mom, who was now openly crying as she accepted the envelope and the box. "Thank you," Tanya said, her voice trembling. "Thank you so much." Mr. Hayes and the bakery owner nodded before stepping back. "Take care of each other," Mr. Hayes said before walking away, his voice carrying a note of hope. Tanya closed the door, turning to Jamal with tears still glistening in her eyes. She knelt in front of him, holding the envelope and cake. "Baby," she said softly, "look at what your heart has done. You've reminded everyone around you what it means to love and to care. I couldn't be prouder of you." Jamal hugged her tightly, his small arms wrapping around her neck. "I just wanted you to have a good birthday, Mama," he whispered. Tanya pulled back and looked into his eyes. "You gave me so much more than that, Jamal. You showed me that no matter how hard life gets, there's always room for hope. You reminded me what it means to believe in people." Jamal smiled, wiping his tears. For the first time in days, he felt lighter, as though the weight of what had happened was fading. The kindness of strangers had turned his pain into a memory of resilience, and he knew that his mom's words were true. Love and hope could overcome even the darkest moments. As the evening wore on, Jamal and Tanya sat together, savoring the sweet surprise of their new cake. Their laughter filled the apartment, blending with the sounds of the city outside. It wasn't just a birthday anymore. It was a celebration of the strength they shared, the kindness of others, and the belief that even when life seemed unfair, there was still good to be found. And as they blew out the single candle Tanya insisted on lighting for fun, Jamal made a silent promise to himself to always protect that spark of hope, no matter what life threw at him. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the cake. It was about love, resilience, and the kindness that could change everything.